Just a heads up, there's another video about removing the instrument cluster. Okay, we're going to put the instrument cluster here back into the dashboard, and we're going to make sure to first connect the harness cable here with the 5.5mm hex head bolt, and then we're going to connect the speedometer cable back to the cluster by again reaching around and pushing in that clip so that the sheath can come over, and then we'll attach everything in here with the bolts. So when you're putting the instrument cluster back in, you screw on the harness connector that I talked about a moment ago, and then to reattach the speedometer cable in the back, it's very difficult to reach in, but from the top I was able to reach in behind and then pull it in, and you hear a click when it's in place and it's back in contact. But as you're pushing the instrument cluster back in, you have to be very careful to make sure that this piece here, which is the adjuster spring for your park to drive settings, has fished back through and down around the steering column, because we're going to need to reattach that later. The next step, now that we have the instrument cluster in place, is to attach the nuts here in the lower left and in the lower right corner. These are the nuts, and 10mm hex wrench fits on them, so I'm going to attach those now. That we got the instrument cluster back in place with the two bottom screws in the corners here and here, being careful because the socket, my socket wrench, it's not a lot of clearance to fit here. The next step is to put back the metal trim plate piece and attach it to the top with the two small screws that are going to go here and here. So we'll do that. So we've got the bracket here in place. It just slips right on top of that white piece, and I slipped the bottom lip underneath, and it just sits right here. We take the small gray screws and we're going to reattach those here, and one on the left and one on the right. So let me get this started to hold this piece in place, and then we'll do the other one. Take that in here, get that in, and check the others. Okay, so now we have the instrument cluster lens back in place. As I mentioned earlier, we had the 3 plastic clips. First one is here, second one is there, third one is there, and then you had 7 screws. This is our broken clip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in here, and 7 here, and that is now in place, not going anywhere. Okay, so the next step now is we're going to have to lift the steering column back up into place, and to do that we're going to be reattaching the bolts up here on the left and here on the right to reattach the steering column. So we'll do that now. So this is a 15mm socket head to get the steering column back in place. Here, this is the left side after I got it pretty much placed, and the same for the right side here. Tighten that up, make sure they're even, and then the steering column is in place. Now that we've got the steering column back up in place with these 2 bolts on either side, we have to reattach your shifter cable here. And as I showed you at the beginning, I had marked with a Sharpie exactly where it had come off in the beginning, so we know where to reattach it. And so we're just going to clip that right into place now, exactly where it was, and that should leave us the ability to return exactly what setting we have for the shifter. Okay, so we have the clip in place here, and just to make sure that everything worked, put the key in, turned it to generator, I have a brick behind the tires just in case, and of course the batteries still get disconnected, but at least we can verify the shifting here. Reverse, neutral, overdrive, drive, 2 and 1. So that is connected and working properly. Okay, last step underneath, we're going to reattach the lower plate and lower vent to below the steering column, but first we have to attach it here, get the hose connection on, and then we're going to use the 4 screws to reattach it here, here, and then underneath here and here. So first reconnect this and then mount the plate. We'll do that now. Okay, so that's the dash back together from the other video. We're just going to hold off and putting the steering wheel on for now, because next thing we're going to do is actually replace the radio here.